Commander Zixathala stared at the screens as his drop pod hurtled through the atmosphere of the human colony world. New Haven, they called it. Soon, it would be just another outpost of the glorious Catharan Empire. His mission was simple: lead the vanguard assault on the primary settlement and secure the command center. The rest of the battle group would follow, crushing any resistance. The humans were soft creatures who valued mercy and individual freedom, weaknesses in the eyes of the Catharan military elite. Zixathala had risen through the ranks by embodying the warrior ethos of his people: strength, discipline, and absolute loyalty to the Empire. Since hatching, he had known nothing but preparation for war, his body and mind carefully engineered for combat. Atmospheric entry complete. Commander, the pod's AI reported. Targeting systems locked on settlement. Impact in 3 minutes. Zixathala's outer membrane rippled in satisfaction. His 4 primary limbs flexed inside their battle harness, already anticipating the fight to come. Humans were physically inferior, fragile bones, no protective exoskeleton, slow reflexes. They would break easily beneath Catharan might. "The glory of combat awaits," he said, reciting the traditional pre-battle mantra. "Through victory, we serve the eternal empire." The pod's interior suddenly flashed red. Warning: primary guidance systems compromised, backup systems failing. Zixathala jerked forward against his restraints. "Report!" Unknown interference pattern. Possible human countermeasure. Altitude drop accelerating beyond safety parameters. The commander's inner hearts quickened. This was not part of the plan. Through the viewing port, he caught a glimpse of green fields rushing toward him at terrifying speed. "Activate emergency thrusters, reroute all power to—" The pod lurched violently, throwing him against the restraint harness. Pain shot through his left secondary arm as something snapped. Warning alarms screamed through the cabin as metal twisted and screeched. "Impact imminent! Brace for—" The world exploded into chaos. The crash drove Zixathala forward with such force that his primary cranial plate cracked against the command console. The pod bounced once, twice, carving a deep furrow into the soil of the human world before slamming into something solid. The final impact tore him from his harness and flung him against the bulkhead. Agony, unlike anything he had ever experienced, overwhelmed him. His right visual receptor had gone dark. Something warm and viscous, his own circulatory fluid, pulsed from multiple ruptures in his exoskeleton. His lower limbs were pinned beneath twisted metal. The emergency beacon clicked weakly beside him, its signal almost certainly too faint to reach the battle group. Through the shattered viewport, he could hear the distant thunder of the battle he was meant to lead, now raging without him. Zixathala tried to move, but fresh waves of pain crashed over him. His species could endure incredible amounts of physical trauma, but he knew his injuries approached the survival threshold. Without medical intervention, his body would begin shutting down vital systems to preserve the central neural cluster. As consciousness began to fade, the commander realized the bitter irony of his situation. He would die not in glorious combat, but alone, broken in a failed drop pod on enemy soil. His final thought before darkness claimed him was a forbidden one, never before entertained in his disciplined mind. What a waste. When awareness returned, it came in disjointed fragments, light piercing his functioning visual receptor, voices, human voices nearby, the scent of unfamiliar chemicals, pain, dulled somewhat but still present throughout his body. "He's regaining consciousness." A human face appeared above him, pale skin, dark head tendrils that humans called hair, concerned expression. Female, Zixathala noted automatically, recalling his xenobiology training. The face belonged to a middle-aged human woman, wearing a white garment. "Can you understand me?" she asked, speaking slowly in the human standard language. Zixathala attempted to rise, to fight, but discovered his limbs were secured. Panic flared briefly until he realized the restraints were medical, not designed for prisoners. He was lying on some kind of treatment platform. "You're in the New Haven Medical Center," the woman continued. "I'm Dr. Lisa Morgan, Chief Medical Officer. You've been severely injured, but you're stable now." "Why?" The translation came out rough through his damaged speech apparatus. The human seemed to understand the question. "Why did we help you?" "Because you needed it." A second human appeared, male, wearing a dark uniform with a weapon holstered at his side. His expression was significantly less compassionate. "Dr. Morgan, I need to remind you that this is an enemy combatant," he said tensely. "Command wants him transferred to the detention facility as soon as he's stable enough to move. He has multiple fractures to his exoskeletal structure, internal hemorrhaging, and a severe cranial injury." "Jake," Dr. Morgan replied, without looking away from her patient. "He's not going anywhere for at least a week. We're using valuable medical resources on a Catheran soldier while our own people are dying," the man named Jake argued. "I took an oath to preserve life. All life." The doctor's tone left no room for debate. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check his neural responses." Zixathala watched this exchange with growing confusion. These humans were debating the ethics of saving an enemy. Such a concept was foreign to Catheran military doctrine, which held that enemies were to be eliminated efficiently, not rescued and healed. "Why?" He tried again, the translator struggling with his damaged vocal apparatus. "Why not? Kill." Dr. Morgan looked down at him, her expression serious but not unkind. "That's not who we are," she said simply. A smaller human entered the room then. A child, Zixathala realized. She moved to stand beside Dr. Morgan, looking at him with undisguised curiosity rather than fear. "Is he awake, Mommy?" the child asked. "Amy, I told you to wait outside," Dr. Morgan said, though without real anger. "I made him a picture." The child held up a colored drawing. Zixathala couldn't make sense of the crude shapes, but he recognized two figures holding appendages. Hands. Humans called them. "See, friends," the child said, pointing to the figures. The concept was so alien to Zixathala's understanding that he could formulate no response. The security officer, Jake, gently guided the child from the room, leaving Zixathala alone with the doctor. "Rest now," she told him. "Your body needs time to heal." As the sedative entered his system, Zixathala found himself struggling with unfamiliar emotions. Confusion, yes, but also something deeper. A growing sense that everything he had been taught about humans might be fundamentally wrong. The next few days passed in a blur of medical procedures and gradual healing. Dr. Morgan explained each treatment before administering it, though Zixathala rarely responded. His translator had been repaired, allowing for basic communication, but he chose to observe more than speak. He learned that Dr. Lisa Morgan was not only the chief medical officer of the settlement, but also a mother to the child Amy. The security officer, Jake Powell, was head of settlement security and clearly distrusted him, though he maintained a professional demeanor. Other humans came and went: medical staff, security personnel, and occasionally curious civilians permitted brief glimpses of the alien patient. On the fourth day, Zixathala attempted communication in the human's language rather than relying on his translator. "Why, you help enemy?" he asked Dr. Morgan as she checked the regeneration of his exoskeleton. She paused, considering her answer. "Because compassion isn't reserved only for those like us," she said. "It's given freely to anyone in need." "Not efficient," he responded. "Perhaps not," she conceded with a small smile. "But it's human." That afternoon, the child Amy returned, accompanied by Jake Powell. She carried more drawings, which she insisted on explaining to Zixathala in great detail. "This is my house and this is the sky. I made it red because Mommy says that's what your planet looks like," she said, pointing to a crimson scribble above a rectangular structure. "And these are flowers. Do you have flowers where you come from?" Zixathala considered the question. "No flowers," he said haltingly. "Red rocks, training grounds." "That sounds boring," Amy declared with childish honesty. "Don't you play games?" "Catharans. Train. Fight. Serve Empire," he explained. The concept of play having no direct translation in his language. Amy frowned at this, clearly finding it difficult to comprehend. "But what about drawing, or singing, or stories?" Before Zixathala could respond, Jake intervened. "Amy, that's enough questions for today. Why don't you go find your mother?" After the child left, Jake remained, studying Zixathala with barely concealed hostility. "I don't understand why you're being kept here instead of a secure facility," he said. "But Dr. Morgan has convinced the council to continue your treatment under guard." "Why, you hate?" Zixathala asked. Jake's expression hardened. "Your people have attacked 3 colony worlds in the past year. Thousands dead. My brother was stationed on Proxima Station when your fleet destroyed it." Zixathala absorbed this information. "I follow orders," he said finally. "Duty to Empire." "And that absolves you?" Jake challenged. "Following orders doesn't make killing innocent people right." "No choice," Zixathala responded, the concept of refusal alien to his upbringing. "Catharans serve, purpose given at hatching." Something in Jake's expression shifted slightly. "Everyone has choices," he said. "Even you." That night, Zixathala lay awake, his mind troubled by the day's conversations. The Catharan Empire had always taught that humans were weak, their compassion a fatal flaw to be exploited. Yet here he was, alive because of that very compassion. If the Empire was wrong about that, what else might they be wrong about? The next morning brought a new visitor, an older human male who introduced himself as David, one of the settlement's teachers. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," David said, setting a strange object on the table beside Zixathala's bed. "I thought you might appreciate something to occupy your mind while you recover." The object was a device containing texts, historical accounts, scientific papers, and literature, all translated into basic Catharan script. "Our council thought it might benefit both our peoples if you came to understand us better," David explained. "And I confess to professional curiosity about your perspective." Over the following days, David returned regularly, engaging Zixathala in increasingly complex discussions about human history, philosophy, and culture. The Catharan found himself drawn into debates that would have been considered treasonous in the Empire, questions about authority, purpose, and the nature of sentient rights. "In your society," David asked during one such conversation, "what happens to those who question their assigned purpose?" "Reconditioning," Zixathala answered, his command of human language improving daily. "Or termination if resistance continues." David nodded thoughtfully. "And yet here you are, engaging in precisely such questioning." "Here I am," Zixathala agreed, the implications of this observation not lost on him. As his body healed, Zixathala's mind opened to possibilities never before considered. Amy continued to visit, bringing drawings that grew more sophisticated, depictions of Zixathala alongside humans, engaged in activities he had never experienced, sharing meals, building structures, standing beneath trees with outstretched limbs. "This is you teaching me about stars," she explained of one drawing. "And this is you helping at the Harvest Festival." Scenarios that would never come to pass. Zixathala knew, once recovered, he would either be imprisoned or exchanged in some diplomatic arrangement. Yet the child's innocent visions stirred something within him, a longing for a life not dominated by combat and conquest. 2 weeks after his crash, Zixathala was summoned to appear before the Settlement Council. With Jake Powell and 2 guards escorting him, he was brought to a large structure, a gymnasium, Jake called it, where rows of seats held curious and wary human faces. At the center sat a panel of elder humans, including Dr. Morgan and a uniformed man introduced as Colonel Martinez, the military liaison to the civilian settlement. "Commander Zixathala," the council leader began, "you've been treated according to our medical ethics and laws regarding prisoners of war. However, we must now determine your status going forward." Colonel Martinez leaned forward. "Commander, your battle group withdrew after our defenses proved stronger than anticipated. We have reason to believe they've regrouped at your forward base in the Deneb sector." This news struck Zixathala with unexpected force. His unit had retreated, leaving him behind, standard procedure for fallen warriors. But somehow the reality of it felt like betrayal. "We have a proposition," Martinez continued. "In exchange for tactical information about Catharan military operations in this sector, we're prepared to offer you asylum." A murmur ran through the assembled humans. Jake Powell stepped forward, clearly troubled. "Colonel, with respect, this alien is a commander in an enemy force. How can we possibly trust him with our security?" "That's what we're here to determine," the council leader replied. "Commander Zixathala, do you understand what's being offered, and what would be expected in return?" Zixathala's gaze moved across the faces before him, suspicious, curious, hopeful, afraid. These were the enemies he had been bred to destroy. Yet they had saved his life and treated him with a dignity his own people would never have shown a fallen adversary. "I understand," he said clearly. "You offer new beginning. Ask me, betray Empire." "We ask you to help protect innocent lives," Dr. Morgan corrected gently. "Same meaning," Zixathala responded. "If I help humans, I am traitor to Cathara, can never go home again." The weight of this reality settled over him. His entire existence had been defined by his service to the Empire. Without that, what was he? Amy's voice suddenly piped up from somewhere in the crowd. "He's not bad. He likes my drawings." A ripple of laughter broke the tension, but Zixathala found himself strangely moved by the child's simple defense. "The Empire teaches that humans are weak because you value life," he said, addressing the entire assembly. "I was created to believe this weakness would lead to your extinction. But I have seen that compassion is not weakness. It is different strength." He turned to Colonel Martinez. "I will provide tactical information, not because I seek asylum, but because I now question whether the Empire's war is just—" The council deliberated for hours while Zixathala waited under guard. Finally, he was called back to hear their decision. "Commander Zixathala," the council leader announced, "we have voted to accept your offer of cooperation and extend provisional asylum. You will work with Colonel Martinez's team to provide intelligence on Catharan military capabilities and intentions. In return, you will be granted protected status within our settlement." Jake Powell was assigned as his liaison, a decision that surprised Zixathala, given the man's obvious distrust. As they walked back to the medical center where Zixathala would remain until permanent quarters could be arranged, Jake explained. "I requested the assignment," he said. "I still don't trust you, but I want to understand. If there's even a chance of preventing more bloodshed, it's worth the risk." Over the next week, Zixathala worked with the human military, providing detailed information about Catharan tactics, technology, and likely strategies. Each revelation felt like a betrayal of everything he had been, yet also a step toward something new, a purpose chosen rather than imposed. In the evenings, he continued his discussions with David, delving deeper into human concepts of ethics, choice, and identity. Amy visited regularly, her drawings now depicting Zixathala in various roles within the community, helping with construction, teaching young humans about space, standing guard alongside Jake. "You see much potential in me," he told her one evening as she explained her latest creation. "That's because you can be anything," she replied with childish certainty. Mommy says everyone gets to choose who they want to be. 3 weeks after his crash, the warning sirens began. Zixathala was with Colonel Martinez, reviewing defensive positions, when the settlement's sensors detected multiple Catharan dropships entering the atmosphere. "They're coming back," Martinez said grimly, rushing toward the command center with Zixathala following closely. Larger force this time. Inside the center, chaos reigned as civilians were ordered to emergency shelters, and defense teams scrambled to their positions. Dr. Morgan appeared, coordinating medical response teams. "Lisa, get Amy and the other children to the mountain bunkers," Jake ordered, as he distributed weapons to the security force. "I can help," Zixathala said, stepping forward. All eyes turned to him, suspicion flaring anew. "How do we know this isn't part of your plan?" someone demanded. "Maybe you've been feeding us false information, waiting for this moment." Before Zixathala could respond, the tactical display showed the dropships approaching from the settlement's vulnerable eastern quadrant, exactly where he had advised strengthening defenses. "They're following standard assault protocol," he said, moving to the display. "Three-pronged attack, heavy units at the center, infiltration teams at the flanks." He turned to Martinez. "Your defenses are positioned to counter their expected strategy, but Catharan commanders adapt quickly. When they meet resistance at the primary target, they'll divert to secondary objectives, your power generation facility and communications array." Martinez studied him for a moment, then nodded to a communications officer. "Get me a direct line to all defense posts." "I can predict their tactical shifts," Zixathala continued. "Let me communicate with your defense teams." A tense silence fell over the command center. Finally, Martinez made his decision. "Get him a comm unit," he ordered, "but monitor every transmission." As the dropships entered visual range, Zixathala took his position at the tactical display. For the first time in his life, he was about to engage in battle against his own kind. "Eastern Defense Team, prepare for heavy assault," he instructed, his voice clear over the communication system. "They will deploy shock troops first, followed by heavy weapons. Target the dropship thrusters before they can deploy fully." The human defenders followed his directions, their concentrated fire crippling the lead ship before it could disgorge its complement of warriors. The remaining ships immediately altered course, just as Zixathala had predicted. "Southern quadrant, they're coming your way," he called out. "Prepare mortar positions for my mark." For 2 hours, the battle raged across the settlement's perimeter. Zixathala directed the human defenders with the precision born of intimate knowledge of Catharan tactics, anticipating each shift in strategy before it materialized. The human forces, though outnumbered, held their ground. In the command center, Amy had refused evacuation, clinging to her mother and quietly coloring in a corner while the adults fought to save their home. Zixathala caught glimpses of her between tactical commands, her small face calm amidst the chaos, trusting in the adults around her, including him. Finally, the Catharan ships began to withdraw, their assault broken against unexpectedly effective resistance. A cheer went up from the defense teams as the last enemy signatures disappeared from their sensors. Colonel Martinez approached Zixathala, extending his hand in the human gesture of respect. "You just saved hundreds of lives, Commander." Zixathala hesitated, then carefully took the offered hand. "Not Commander anymore," he said. "Just Zixathala now." As the settlement began to assess damage and treat casualties, Zixathala found himself approached by humans who had previously regarded him with fear or hostility. Many offered thanks or cautious acknowledgments of his role in their defense. Jake Powell, nursing a minor injury to his arm, gave him a nod of genuine respect. "Looks like you made your choice," Jake said. "Yes," Zixathala agreed. "First real choice of my life." That evening, as the settlement celebrated its victory and mourned its losses, Dr. Morgan found Zixathala sitting alone outside the medical center. gazing at the stars. "Amy's been looking for you," she said, sitting beside him. "She wants to show you her newest drawing. It's quite good. You defending the town." "I am hero in her eyes," Zixathala observed. "Strange. To Catharans, I am now worst kind of traitor." "And to you?" Lisa asked gently. "What are you to yourself?" Zixathala considered this question, more profound than any he had faced in combat. "I am becoming," he said finally. "Learning what it means to choose purpose, not merely fulfill it." 3 months later, Zixathala stood at the landing pad where an Earth command ship waited to transport him to another colony world, threatened by Catharan expansion. His knowledge of Imperial tactics had proven invaluable, and other settlements now requested his assistance in preparing their defenses. His quarters in New Haven had gradually filled with remnants of a life he never expected. Books from David, a security uniform modified for his physiology, a gift from Jake, and dozens of drawings from Amy, which he had carefully preserved. "You will come back, right?" Amy asked, clutching his lower limb as Dr. Morgan looked on with a smile. "Yes," Zixathala promised, carefully patting the child's head, as he had learned was appropriate. New Haven is home now. The concept still felt strange. Home as a place chosen, rather than assigned, populated by beings once considered enemies, but now something closer to family. Jake approached, carrying a small case containing Zixathala's few possessions. "Earth Command says you'll be back within 6 months," he said. "We'll keep your quarters ready." "Thank you, Jake," Zixathala replied. The formality between them long since evolved into a cautious friendship. "Protect them while I am gone." "Always," Jake assured him. As Zixathala boarded the transport, he carried with him not just tactical knowledge to share with other human settlements, but something far more precious, a vision of possibility. Perhaps one day, other Catharans might question as he had. Perhaps the war itself might end not through conquest but understanding. The last thing he saw before the ship's doors closed was Amy, waving frantically, her other hand clutching a new drawing, one he hadn't yet seen. Lisa held it up for him to view, a green field beneath a blue sky, populated by figures both human and Catharan, standing together. It was just a child's hopeful imagination. Zixathala knew. The path to such a reality would be long and fraught with challenges. The Empire would not easily abandon its expansionist ideology, nor would all humans readily accept former enemies as allies. Yet as the ship lifted off, carrying him toward new uncertainties and possibilities, Zixathala found himself filled with an unfamiliar emotion. The humans called it hope, the belief that through individual choices, the future might be shaped into something better than the past. He thought of Amy, who would grow up knowing that enemies could become friends. Of Jake, who had lost family to Catharans, yet found the capacity to move beyond hatred. Of Dr. Morgan, whose compassion had saved not just his body, but his consciousness. Perhaps, Zixathala reflected, as New Haven receded beneath him, that was the true strength of humanity, not their technology or tactics, or even their resilience, but their capacity to imagine alternatives to conflict, to choose songs over swords, as David might poetically phrase it. And now, against all expectations, a Catharan warrior bred for conquest had made the same choice. One individual's defection would not end an interstellar war, but it was a beginning, a first step on a path neither humans nor Catharans had walked before. Zixathala settled into his seat, Amy's drawings carefully stored in his case, and allowed himself to contemplate the most revolutionary concept of all, a future limited not by what he was created to be, but by what he chose to become.